world, and that's the nice thing of the Zoom. There are many disadvantages. We always say with these Zoom lectures that we started organizing from the very start of organizing Roskvit. But these Zoom lectures, they have the advantage that they're accessible from all over the world, also live. We do this, like I said already, for quite some time. So this is the 25th lecture that we have, that you can all find back on our Zoom channel later on. All different kind of subjects, a lot directly connected to our work, which is definitely the case of the lecture tonight. It's the result of a report, of a research that has been done and conducted by Roskvit for the past half year, a year almost. I don't say much more because we have two people here who are part of that research and really know a lot more about it than I do. So I will quickly give the floor first to Ruslan Antonenko, who will introduce also Fulco Treffers a little bit later on. So please, Ruslan, I give the floor to you.
Всім привіт!
Hello everyone. Allow me now to share my presentation with you. Here we are. I hope that you can see my slides. Right, before we start our lecture, I would like to give you some background. The Roskvit team is an international one, and of course, when we started this research, we did it in English. But a bit later, when we started to translate it into Ukrainian, we understood that the two English words, safety and security, have different equivalents and different coloring in English in comparison with Ukrainian. So in Ukrainian, their meaning is much closer and they cannot be discussed one without the other. And this is one more argument for discussing them together. So today's lecture is going to focus on our research dedicated to safety and security. We will introduce the team, we will introduce our methodology, and we will pinpoint the key challenges of this research and of safety and security in particular. We will also give you some recommendations on our part, and we will review the international experience. The experience of Ukraine shows that it depends not only on the institutional capacity, but also on the capacity of people to adapt and to act as a consolidated body. Roskvit saw since 2022 that we need changes to be introduced into the process of planning, but unfortunately the first steps were taken at least as early as 2023, at least in this area. And the recommendations of this research will target national, local authorities, and they will be also interesting for international partners and, of course, for local communities. I would like to introduce our team engaged in this research, and the lead author, Albertas Tamashauskas, who has made the greatest contribution to our research, and we're very grateful for that. Another author, a co-author, is Fulco Treffers, who is our today's lecturer. We would like to express our sincere thanks to Philip Moser, Jennifer Tobola, and for their recommendations how to improve this report. And the last member of the team is me, Ruslan Antonenko, and I have joined this research at its latest phase. Now I would like to give the floor to Fulco Treffers, who is going to present our research. Thank you very much.
Changing the screen. Thank you, Ruslan. Will give me the time to also mention the possibility of your choice of language. I forgot to mention that in the beginning. So if you entered later, please choose, go to the globe in the bottom of the screen and choose your preferred channel, which is English or Ukrainian, so to follow the lecture simultaneous, translated as always by Olena Nefyodorova. So please, Fulco, if you are ready to go, then we can start.
Yes, thank you, Lilette, Ruslan, for the introduction, and thank you, Albertas, for all the work that you did last year on this. To be honest, this is actually a difficult and both interesting topic. I'm an architect and urban planner, and I never dreamt of becoming a specialist in safety and security in buildings, or was never hoping when I was a child that I would learn about evacuation routes when I was making mobility plans. I was never dreaming of thinking where energy plants or nuclear plants should be situated in relation to safe neighborhoods. But anyway, it's not it's not easy, but it's also in a way not complicated, and it's also not difficult to start thinking about it. When you walk around Ukraine, when you see the people, when you see their resilience, their vibrancy, but also their hope and their that their hopes for the future, then it's actually a very beautiful topic to work on. How can we make a resilient city? And how did it change my approach on looking at planning, urban planning, and architecture in the last couple of years? So more and more, I see this topic as a urgent, impactful, but also an interesting and sometimes even beautiful topic to look at. Because urban planners and architects, what we do is we shape a part of the world, the physical shape, and we connect it to what is really happening. And when we are designing a landscape or a building or a facade, it is amazing to see all the opportunities that we have, including the opportunities to make it a little bit safer. And we integrate all those challenges and all those opportunities into one shape in the end. But this is what we do, and that is relevant, and that's nice to know that we can play that role. And of course, still, I hate the regimes and the people like Russia that create such destruction, and it should not be necessary. But since it's necessary, and since there are still some powers that make it necessary, I still have hope that we can resist this by our values, by our minds, and by our creativity, and by our visualization, and that we can withstand it a little bit. Are we ready for this? No, well, more and more, not fully yet. This is a first presentation of a report of a topic that we didn't think of that much before, and we are now doing this, and it has maybe mistakes, or it has things that to be developed further. So I hope for good feedback and for good Q&A in the end, and I hope more than anything for follow-ups, projects and research and recommendations and time to develop the next steps in this. I will start with a slide which is about why did we do this, because Ruslan already said something about it. It is related to our urban recovery planning and our governance, and we saw a gap in the approaches linking physical protection and social resilience. And we had the feeling that this topic became more and more relevant, not only after the war, but also now during the war. How can we be how can we be helping and supporting in making the cities more safe and secure? And we did this by several field assessments in conflict-affected Ukrainian cities. And we, of course, included planners and architects and some experts and some interviews with also with residents. And of course, the experience from Albertas, who was in Mariupol in the beginning of the war as a Mariupol citizen. His name is a little bit Greek, but there is a Greek link in Mariupol in history times. And we combined hard and soft infrastructure and in the security issues. And we also looked very much on other countries, for example, Finland, Switzerland, and how they have their security system and their safe cities organized. And that was something very interesting, which I will refer to once in a while. What we did was we finalized now a report with some transferable practices. Those were identified and adapted to the Ukraine's legal, cultural, and spatial context. So it's not just can we copy paste it from other countries? Can we see what is directly needed? But we always try to connect it to the Ukrainian culture, make it Ukraine specific. And that led to a set of recommendations, and they all fall within the environment of the Ukrainian legislation, and it's actually added to that. It can be added to that. It can be supporting that. And in the end, we also found out that we think that what we learned and what we found out that this can be very interesting also for the international community. So what can we learn from Ukraine in the resilience, in the safety and security topics? The definition, the key topics. It's constantly safety and security, and safety means the state of being being protected from harm or injury. It is, by definition, about preventing accidents and reducing the risks that could cause physical harm, health problems, or property damage. Whereas security is to protect yourself from intentional threats and attacks. And you, in both cases, try to not have them, but it's just a different approach. And the focus in security is on preventing malicious activities like theft, sabotage, espionage, terrorism, like military threats. And of course, we are not acting as if we could prevent military threat, and we are not like the Ministry of Defense, but we are looking at it from this point of view. What can we do as planners and architects in these two topics? This led to, I think, 100-something pages of reports, but we now focus in this 30-minute presentation on a few specific topics. Public bomb shelters, safe buildings, and critical infrastructure protection as part of the safety topics. And personal security and emergency response as part of the more security topics. And I'll go through them in a few slides and examples. Starting with security, because it's a little bit the personal one. It's quite nice. What can you do yourself as an architect, as a planner, but also as just a resident? So this is actually for everybody who sees this lecture or this video. What can you do? And I tell this story a lot, especially also outside of Ukraine, because for Ukrainians, this is very often very obvious. Things like printed copies of important documents next to your DIA account. Things like not clicking on unknown links. The reporting of suspicious drones, but not reporting where the troops go and your own military activities go. Things that are so obvious for Ukrainians are not the same as it is for the non-Ukrainians. So, but this is what you all had to learn in the very beginning of the war, and which is it was learned within 24 hours, I would say. And this is a part of what security and safety is about. That what people can do themselves, organize, explain them, manage, that they will do that as good as possible. Because it's not always the responsibility of the state, it's also everybody's individual responsibility, and that combination is a perfect match. Where the state or the local government can play an important role is more in the safety on, for example, bomb shelters. Bomb shelters are a huge topic, a huge issue in Ukraine because they are all around, but everybody knows and feels they are not used well enough. And I don't think that I'm being in Ukraine most of the time of my life at this moment. I don't think that it would ever say to somebody, "You're stupid not going to the bomb shelter," because me, myself, I have this tendency as well to just ignore many of the alarms. But how can we make bomb shelters more used? How can we make them better found, better implemented? Because at those moments that you once in a while, every one of us feels this is a moment that I should have been in a bomb shelter, then it's usually either too late or too uncomfortable, or you don't know exactly how it works. So what we feel that the bomb shelters, in its technical way, they are there in its amounts, maybe not enough, but they are available. But the use of the bomb shelters can be much improved. And how can you do that? One of the examples that we found out from Ukrainian experience actually is the multi-purpose of the shelters. So those shelters that have more other purposes than just only the shelter, only the safety, only the hiding, that those places are used much better. People know it from other functions, know it from other activities, and they are part of their daily life, like a metro, or sometimes like a school, or like a community building. They are reachable. They are not only related to hiding, and especially they are also therefore often more comfortable, and you can create more comfort even by uplifting the environment, by the design, by using kind of lights that are more calming. Because when you have to go to a bomb shelter, there is a few things that are against it. It's the distance, it's the quality, but how can you define this quality? And light and design and the color, those are the things that are in our profession as architects that we can influence. They really make you decide whether to go or not to the bomb shelter. Because when it's more comfortable, when it's more calming, instead of very loud noise and a lot of reflection or a lot of bright lights, it won't help you in those stressful situations, in those depressing times, or in those moments that you're in danger and in fear, and that you want to also use that place not only for hiding from the bombs, but also hiding from maybe memories or hiding from mental questions. So the quality and the comfort is a very important thing as well. So multi-purpose and quality design. The third one is the management and maintenance of a place. This goes hand in hand with the multi-purpose, but not only. Also, when it's only a single-purpose shelter, still the management in the shelters all around Ukraine are totally different organized and also from a totally different quality. The child-friendly places are seen as the ones that are most used as well. Those places where you have some extra toys, where you have some place where a kid can just play around, that you don't have to carry it from your own apartment. Those are the places that are usually more useful and used. I said about mental health in relation to the design, but it also is very practical. Are there health kits? Is there any information in the shelter about mental health support, who you can call, what you can do if you're stressed out? Those elements, all those facilitations are to be done as well. And of course, many people know this and know how to find it, but I think 3 out of 4 times when I check a shelter by professional interest, then those things are not there, unfortunately. And of course, in the end, there are moments, there are times, there are places in Ukraine which need to provide, which need furniture, things that can accommodate longer stays, can be foldable or other kinds of furniture that would help. And that depends really on where it is near the front line. This doesn't sound like rocket science, but very often it's still not done. So let's start talking about it and let's start seeing how we can make that happen. Because here in the left, you see a reasonably, it could be in any city probably, it's a reasonably average bomb shelter in the left side, where you see, okay, this is the place where you can hide for safety to be avoiding the bombs, but there's nothing related to quality. It's just a place where you can be, which is openly accessible, and that's pretty much it. When you look at some of the other examples, and also here we have multiple beautiful examples as well. Then you look at the second and the third picture, then you see with some design, with some colors, with some extra functions, with some maybe a bed, then you can make the place much better, and it will be less like a waiting room where the only thing that you can think of is the threats, but it will be also for some other things that you can develop and live more or less on. What we see in the international examples is that inclusivity and multi-purpose is relevant. And here in the right, there's an example from Finland where the bomb shelter is also a cafeteria, or actually the other way around, of course. There is a cafeteria which is underground and which functions as a bomb shelter. And actually, in Finland, there's a huge amount of underground facilities. Some of them only open for real big threats, but many of them they are just used in daily life for commercial or social or sports activities, and they function as a bomb shelter when there is a threat. So Finland being that close to Russia as well, and they developed that underground structure through the years, and they really show some examples how that shelter can be done. The regular inspections are here in Finland very important, next to the multi-use that I explained. And the third point, which is very important, is the accessibility for vulnerable population. So that means if there's a resident like elderly people or disabled or the veteran that is wheelchair depending, that is the accessibility is crucial. In this case, we see there are many improvements also to be made in Ukrainian shelters in general. There is a national legislation about roles and responsibilities for the planning of this, and they have several incentives included in the law, in regulations, to make private investments and dual-use safe spaces more normal, which means that if you develop something, and then if you want to support that by an underground structure that can also function as a bomb shelter, then I don't know exactly how it works, but like subsidies or some funding can be organized. So that is the Finnish example. There's also public bomb shelters more in public space, in outdoor areas. And also here, the design, things like we can organize, the design and the art and the colors, they really make a difference. Here you see some examples of playgrounds or bus stops or something in between in public space where you can question maybe always the quality of the art, but at least it's made something more attractive than just a gray bunch of concrete. The involvement of the local community really helps in there, and it will not be the only time that I will say this in this presentation. The involvement of the local community in making, in designing, in maintaining the place is a really big advantage in organizing all those resilience, all those safety and security structures. This has to do with the fact that if it's also part of your decision, if it's also part of your ideas or your inspiration, or maybe even your artwork or your help in building it, then also you are more eager to maintain it and also more eager to use it. And in the end, that is the purpose of those things, that they are used when the threat is there. Next to the public bomb shelters and shelters, we have the more private shelters. We called it in the report in the category of safe building. And probably all of you know that and understand that the building structure of most of the buildings in Ukraine, those panel houses, they are by far safe from missile attacks. Those panels are falling apart, and very often they take with them many of the rows below them, and the extra risk is there. There are several examples how to deal with this, or when you build something new, how you can deal with different other attacks. And one of them is the safe rooms. You can do that in a new building, but you can also do that in an existing building, as you can see here on the left photo. It is a can be a private investment in your own property, but it can also be a collective investment in an apartment block or something like that. As well, that some of the apartment blocks do have the opportunity to have the ground floor or the underground floor used as a shelter, but then you have to manage that. You have to manage it both in practical ways, who's cleaning it, who is organizing the electricity there in a proper way, who was storing materials there before, but also you have to manage that somebody really checks if it's really a safe place, that some checklist is there about how those safe buildings and those underground structures in the safe buildings, private safe buildings, but collective, that they are really safe. That means things like double evacuation rooms. If on one side there is an attack and you cannot leave there anymore, then there's always a second option. It has to do with the structure, how it's built, how thick the concrete is, and if it really will not collapse, and that you're buried inside the building itself. So that knowledge, that technology, that checklist has to be done. And also what can be done is to really change the norms on this. Not that easy in existing buildings, but they can be norms and regulations as a practical set also for new buildings. And there, the collaboration with safety experts, maybe some NGOs that develop a basic knowledge about it, some activists that put this on the agenda on every new building block, make sure there is some small or big, depending on the size of your building, both in residential and in commercial businesses, have those safe rooms that you can use in times of threat. And here you see the key recommendations. Reinforce them can be possible in existing structures. Check the fireproof and the shock resistant materials. Emergency kits like water, solar power batteries, etc. Different escape routes, and that the routes towards those safe rooms, that they are cleared, because we're all human beings. At a certain moment, you ignore the risks, and then you start using everything as storage again. Other ways how to protect civilian structures, and that is very tailor-made. We see more often that some structures are going to be built as like walls. We hope that those walls will not just be made as like thick concrete walls that are blocking everything, including blocking something which is quality of visuals. Here, you can see a design of a very safe structure that is just as good as a concrete wall, but this functions visually and as a design concept in a totally different way. Because of the structure, because of the details, because of some of the elements, and it is not usually not more expensive than a concrete thick wall over here. So those additional reinforcements can be done. Next to the personal protection, we also have the topic of safety related to the critical infrastructure. Critical infrastructure meaning energy plants, water stations, maybe something like a communication infrastructure. Those places have an extra value in terms of safety that is needed. And more you see that we all know that they are attacked, have been attacked for the last couple of years intensively, but how to protect them except for the air defense system. Maybe as builders we can do something. We can place the structures around it by covering the infrastructure with heavy weight. But there is another option as well, because the redesigning of re-engineering the whole system is also an option. They're both really expensive. I mean, it's really not something low-hanging fruit. This is really expensive and quite time-consuming. But I do want to stress some extra attention to this topic of the decentralization, because it helps to avoid the system's vulnerability. And step by step, it could be organized in a different way. The pictures show like an old approach in heating system, where you see, sorry, a centralized system that goes from one to another, top down, or at least in one direction. You see there the factory, and then later on neighborhoods, and then maybe a private house. They are all in one line from this central station. And when there is one element, especially in the beginning of that line, when that is bombed, then there's a whole area which has no power, no electricity, or no heating anymore. When you decentralize your system of critical infrastructure, you use also different technologies like wind energy or solar energy, then you see that the system goes both ways. It supports each other. Even from local households, you have maybe electricity systems or batteries that can support others. So you see the green arrows, they are both ways, and the red arrows go only in one direction. If here a hit is being done, the decentralized grid will partly take over from other sources, and not everything is shut down. In a way, in Ukraine, it partly already works like that on a larger scale, but on a local scale, absolutely not everywhere. This could be an interesting advantage. Just a second. Interesting new approach for me was to understand how, in another way, our planning and our designing of the roads could even save lives. I needed several moments, several meetings actually almost for this to understand what Albertas really meant here, because what is happening, and when there is an accident, when there is an attack, it's not an accident, when there's an attack in some neighborhood, very often the Ukrainian reality is that there's not enough space on the road that the fire trucks or the ambulances can get to the place of the attack in time. They cannot get in reasonable fast time. And the traffic is too congested. Sometimes a bridge has been already bombed, so there is even more congested. There's more pressure on some specific roads. And there is no knowledge about how you can supply space for those emergency vehicles. So there is a method which is used in some European countries, most of them by now, which says that if there is something happening, that the vehicles that are using the road should not go all to one side. No, they split up so that the free space will be in the middle. Because when you have that, then it's much easier, and it avoids new accidents between those cars and trucks and motorcycles. And it's easier to take a little bit of space for the fire trucks and the ambulances to go through. This concept is proven concept now in many countries, and it would be more than helpful if Ukraine would adapt to this concept. And this is not a law that you can organize, but you can communicate about it, that this is the thing that from now on we should do. It needs communication, it needs some experience, it needs explanation on all the different communication channels that Ukrainian government has. And actually, this would really simply save lives. The same would happen when you would redesign some of the zones around hospitals, because it's very often around the hospitals, they're very close to my house as well. There is too much traffic, too many traffic lights. There is just not a possibility for the ambulance to go through. So the last spot of when you have an injured person from an attack, when you want to bring this person back to the hospital, not back, when you want to bring it to the emergency rooms in the hospitals as soon as possible, then it won't work. You will lose too much time, and therefore also decrease the health context. So these kind of understanding in mobility really opened up my mind about, okay, also here as planners and as consultants and as government, we can organize this as well. That leads me to the planning tools. It's maybe a little bit of abstract, but what was more and more in our work and in our good examples, what we saw is mainly three methodologies in what, I don't know how many architects or planners are in this room, but what really help us to think about how to make the city or the neighborhood more safe and secured. First of all, in risk management, people work with scenarios. What does it mean, scenario thinking? It's a design concept. So what you do is you're not making a long list of everything that could happen, but you think of scenarios that could happen, like some extreme but possible scenarios that could happen. Something could happen in this neighborhood when there is an attack on the neighboring bridge or the dam, and there is some flooding. What would that mean for the neighborhood? And not that it will happen, but just to imagine that it will happen. And then, are we prepared for the consequences? Are we ready for the consequences? If yes, then of course nothing is needed. Usually it's no, because you cannot be prepared for all the negative scenarios. But you can look at those things that are possible within your influence, within your budget, which are possible to make the negative effects of a scenario less. So the scenario thinking leads to different solutions that you can calculate, that you can analyze, whether you think, okay, we see those different scenarios happening. I think about flooding, I think about other threats. I maybe think also about climate threats that could happen, or it doesn't have to stick only to military, but you try to imagine what could happen, and if you're prepared, and in what ways, what measurements, you could be more prepared. This scenario thinking is interesting to do as an expert, but it can also be very helpful to do this not as experts only or with the government, but with the community. And this participation is interesting because the community, the residents in that neighborhood or in the city, they have their own experiences, they have their own vision, and they know in quite small details how that neighborhood really works and where the tricks are and where the bottlenecks are. Participation leads to more detailed and tailor-made solution, but it will also lead to more commitment in organizing those measurements that you want to take on safety and security, that they will really be executed and supported and integrated in the lives. In a project that Roskvi did in 2024, we also developed an urban resilience framework. This was supported by GIZ and the German government. And this urban resilience framework is also a way, a tool, a planning tool, how we can develop from research to needs assessments and SWOTs, both on short-term and long-term. How can we develop resilience strategies for the city? Resilience in terms of climate, in terms of economy, but definitely also in terms of safety and security related to critical infrastructure or social needs. This framework is another methodology which relates to urban planning in Ukraine. There are definitely other tools, and it would be interesting to continue working on this as making it more accessible, making it not just like a list of think-abouts, but really different tools and methodologies in our work as designers and planners. So, in short, this is too much text to really read everything, but we have, in short, 4 main goals that we constantly want to share, and they have different reasons and arguments and elements. Improve the bomb shelters to make it more used, improve them in physical design, in terms of medical health, communication, first aid kits, all that. Include community participation in your processes, as I told a couple of times before. Strengthen the civil society also to take the responsibility, not only to think, but also to take responsibility. And think about rapid response mechanisms and different low-hanging fruit that you can do as an individual, but also as an institute. Like I said in the beginning, this is all done within the legal context. It's not, it's like an addition. It's not against, or it's not like we suggest there should be a new law on this, new legislation. No, the technical safety requirements for the buildings, roads, and shelters are described in the Ukrainian legislation. So this is an addition. And we hope that all the people involved in this and the activists that can also become more involved in this, they will add to these technical aspects also those functional, social design aspects as well to save lives. We hope so to go deeper in that. This is like the first stage. And then there is a flow. We involve the community, we start renovating, we show that again, we include the multi-purpose opportunities. That also leads to more involvement and management. It leads to more emergency routes, and then the more expensive elements can come in, both in a like the critical infrastructure, but also more on a private level on the safe housing. So we believe that this kind of a flow, starting from the left, moving to the right, maybe making a tour once in a while and a detour, but this flow could be relevant, interesting, and beautiful to save lives as architects. It's last part is about some slides that Ruslan and I have prepared for the international community. What we see that there's so many people interested in how Ukraine survived, how Ukraine stopped the Russians in the very first weeks or months, at least at most of the areas where they came in, how the community was resistant. And of course, there's many dramas, many traumas, but there is also this Ukrainian resilient community approach. What is it really? And of course, we don't know all the details and we don't know the exact things, but it is these lines that we see, that adversity, that solidarity, the value defending, and the adaptability that we see as crucial elements in the Ukrainian resilience. And I'd love to hear your comments on this, if that is resembling, resonating to you as well, because this is what also European Union countries really want to understand, because they might not have the same resilience and they want to learn from this. So this is also something that Ukraine can bring when entering the European Union, and can try to embrace and share. Because learning from Ukraine, this community, we feel is really crucial. It's organized people can do so much. Even when it's like ad hoc, even when it's like not organized in a totally structured way, maybe even when it's not in a totally structured top-down management way. It's just the urge that people feel to collect and to organize themselves, and they think and act local. They think and act, and local doesn't mean like a local community, one hromada. They can even mean vary your neighborhood, or your house, or your three families together, and that is really something beautiful to embrace. And there is different roles for all the stakeholders involved. It's the role of acting, but it can also be the role of administrating or supporting or facilitating. And instead of looking at that role as if the government or some institute or should take all those roles, when I talk to the people in the Netherlands, they very often connect them all into one institute. And then I try to explain to them that I've seen different things happening in Ukraine, and it was very beautiful to see, and it was very effective also. And of course, Ukraine used all kinds of digital communication tools, which were also included here as well. It's not so much in this presentation, but the report talks about it as well, how that tools really helped as surviving. To conclude, if I'm now explaining what to be done, it's like a plus or an end approach. It's both hard and soft measurements, physical, strong solutions, sometimes also expensive, but also all those processes, those more soft design approaches, which are so important. It should be for both existing and new buildings. For new buildings, it's a little bit easier to implement everything, but on the other hand, the majority, far majority of the population lives, of course, in a building that has been built 10, 15, 30, 50, 100 years ago. So we have to deal with that as well. It's improving the quality and the quantity of safe places. And it has to be done by both the institutions or the government and the community. And in all phases, it's a combination of research, design, and building. And the last one, this military threat that has to be somehow faced. What is very interesting is to connect it to other security measurements. So when I showed that picture of this decentralization of the energy system, that is actually a very interesting opportunity also finance-wise, because there are some principles behind the planning of our safe and secure cities and buildings, which are similar to the principles of climate change, for example, or some of the the decentralization is relevant for a military threat, but also for climate change and threats in that way. And that means that you can combine forces and maybe also budgets to improve on both ways with the same methodology. Similar connections can be made with other measurements, where social and let's say military threat aspects can be combined. And we believe that combining those budgets, combining those measurements, that is one of the ways how to improve it, because of course everything costs money, and that is not the easiest part. But when you can smartly combine it in purposes, in functionalities, in budgets, in donors, then there is more options available. So with a little bit of hope and with a lot of strength and support from the team and hopefully also you. I end this presentation with sharing these 3 links to the report and to the YouTube lecture that just has been recorded together with UN Habitat. And hopefully this leads to some more questions and next steps. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was really eye-opening, I think, for me at least, but probably for a lot of people in the audience as well. I have a couple of questions, but I see already also the audience has, so I would like to give the floor as much as possible. I see you more often, so I can ask them then. We do it as follows. We have a Q&A in the bottom of your screen, so please put your questions there. I see already one. Ruslan will take the Ukrainian questions, and I will do the English one still, since my mic is open. And you were touching upon this question in the last bit of your talk. I would like to start with that one. That is a question about, in your opinion, what lessons learned in Ukraine should be applied to European cities. That is basically partly you answered, but maybe you have a few more words to that aspect, like how can we learn?
Yes. Well, I was invited by a Dutch safety institute, which is called the Safety Region. And this was, for me, hopefully just the beginning, to give these lessons to the Netherlands. So what did you see in Ukraine? And one of the, of course, there's a lot to say about this, but there's in general 2 or 3 different aspects that I constantly emphasize when I give that presentation in that area in the Netherlands. First, individual approach. What can a resident do? Why is that so important, and why can we learn that from Ukraine? In the Netherlands, I just give this example. It will be about the Netherlands a couple of times, but it's a direct answer to this question. In the Netherlands, the government is, relatively speaking, 3 times as big as in Ukraine, as it was in Ukraine in 2021. So that means that for every citizen, there were, on an average, 3 times more civil servants in the combination of local and national government. That means that people pay more taxes to support all those that government, but also that means that they have more expectations from the government, and they put all kind of responsibilities in a way towards the government. I pay for this, you organize it, you manage this, you hire people from that, etc. That seems like an interesting concept, but when you turn it around, it means that the Ukrainian society also is more self-dependent, is more independent, and not expecting that much from their government, because it's the smaller government, they pay less taxes, and that approach in they will solve everything for me is just simply not true and also not expected. But in the Netherlands, they are now more and more, I speak to people more and more afraid that they say, people expect too much from our government. We cannot phase everything. We need to do it together between the institutes and the government and the local residents. And whether that is individuals or groups, that is then the next question. It goes directly to my second learning point from the Ukrainian context. Can we somehow have a Dutch an example in the Netherlands, or a metaphor in the Netherlands, which resembles the same way how Ukraine organized or is still organizing their communities together, how they are managing all kind of activities. In the Netherlands, you would very often, very fast structurize everything, bureaucratize everything, but sometimes that's not that helpful. There's ad hoc, maybe sometimes feels a little bit chaotic, but very often it is the most effective way to just do it, to just act it as a community, as a person and as a group together. And that just act concept is what, at least with my experience now in the Netherlands and Ukraine, that I feel that could be supported much more. That you should try to encourage the residents, the community, the society to just take responsibility as a group. And it doesn't matter exactly how that goes. You can facilitate that as a government. You can facilitate that as an institute that is responsible in the end for that, but you don't have to take it over.
Can I just add a follow-up question? Because I'm also from the Netherlands, and what I see happening here is not a lot, actually, but you do see a kind of constant warning. There is from the government now also, and from ministries, there comes this feeling of threat. And the one thing they advise citizens to do is to prepare in the matter of getting cash money in and preparing with some bottles of water and to have this emergency package there. Is this a way to go, or would there other things that they could do in other ways? My question is a bit suggestive, I think, but
yeah, I think you have some opinion about this. It's one thing, okay, growing awareness. So that is what the Dutch government at the moment is doing, and I think that is also happening in several other European countries. But in Poland or in Estonia, that awareness growing is definitely not needed. They feel it already much closer, and that doesn't mean that they're more resilient. And yeah, actually, I can tell my personal opinion on that. We didn't do deep research on that in the last year, but it's a growing question. So maybe I would like to turn it around. If people in the audience have some ideas, because maybe they lived partly in Europe or still do in the European Union or still do, please come up with suggestions, because this is also more like a personal experience than that it's already deeply rooted in research or design concepts.
okay, maybe someone will have a thought on that and come up later.
Put it in the chat. Yeah.
Question in the Q&A. Ruslan? Can you take the question in the Q&A?
Так. Щиро
Yeah,
дякую, Лілет.
thank you very much for giving me the floor, Lilet. Yes, we have a question from the Ukrainian audience. In your opinion, which lessons from Ukraine you must use in Europe, in European cities? Actually, I can answer that. Or maybe Fulco would like to answer. Yeah, go ahead, please,
I
Fulco.
just answered in a way, but Lilet didn't understand.
Так.
But
Yeah,
maybe,
the
Ruslan, what
principle-
is your opinion? Ruslan, what is your opinion on this? What else can we learn from Ukraine in Europe?
Я вважаю, що треба
I
повчитись той
believe that
стійкості,
we
яку
need
українці
to,
мають,
Europe needs to learn the
ніколи
resilience
чекати,
Ukrainians have,
дійсно
never wait for
діяти
everything
за
to
поривом,
happen,
дійсно
act
організовуватись,
on the
згуртовуватись
spur of the
і
moment,
починати діяти.
really
Бо
get
суспільство
organized
в Україні
and
ніколи
start
не
acting,
чекає,
because
починає щось
in
робити.
Ukraine,
Люди
communities
включають
never
світло
wait. We
в якому
start
сховищі
working.
знаходяться,
There is no
люди
light in this
зібрались,
shelter.
поставили рауки,
People come together, they
світло,
put the
щось
generator,
відбувається. Воно може
they
і
install
недостатньо,
lighting.
але
Maybe it
це
is
вже
not
перший
enough,
крок,
maybe it is
далі
not perfect, but this is the first step. And then, Fulco, as Fulco said, it would be great if the civil society would get more responsibility or would rather take more responsibility in shaping these safety and security measures so that people need to get together. I think this is the lesson to be taught to Europe and to be more consolidated, because together we can stand and we can heal and we can win.
Great. We have two people from the audience raising a hand. So one is Tatiana. I will give you the floor to ask your question live if you would want to. So I gave the permission now. Great.
Так, я можу сказати так.
Right.
Чують мене? Вітаю, дуже вдячна за таку. Дуже вдячна.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for this lecture. Thank you for our foreign partners studying the topic. I am a co-designer of the protective buildings, DBN, and I have around 20-25 publications in professional journals and in other publications. And what I would like to say, last year during the Urban Forum, we were presenting together with Jennifer Tabola, and I have learned a lot from her. So, and thank you very much for adding to my experience today. I would like to explain the Ukrainian resilience phenomenon. We have adapted to the situation we have on our hands. We have no way out otherwise. You know, it's like psychology, 5 stages of accepting the situation. So we accepted the situation. Every day, every month, still fewer people will go to the shelters. This is the situation. I studied the duration of air alarms in different regions. So in Kharkiv, the average time is 7 hours. People cannot stay for several hours in a shelter. I have studied also Finnish experience. The Finnish experience and experience of other countries are based upon the fact that the shelter is needed for 48 hours. And so each shelter will have 48 hours worth of water or food, etc., and electricity. And in our case, in the case of Ukraine, we either hide all the time or we live in the environment we have, and we accept the situation we are in. And so the underground in Kiev serves the shelter for like 1% of the population, because all the rest never pay attention and never take shelter. So the classical shelters are not for us. We need a protected environment, secure environment to live, to study, to learn, and to have this feeling of safety. And one thing that really showed me in your lecture, gabions are wrong. They cannot be, because any kind of bomb, this as soon as it is hit, the gabion is transformed into shrapnel. And unfortunately, we cannot hide in a prefab building, because whatever we do to it, it collapses when it is hit. And so we need either to strengthen the basement, and we have the calculations, we have published it on our website, or do otherwise. But, you know, I would correct you here, if I may. And also, I actually talked to Jennifer a lot, to Jennifer Tabola, and we also discussed this very interesting thing that we must refuse from constructing multi-story buildings, because the middle section of the houses is already safe. Also, it is not possible to install these metal mamads like in Israel, just a single mamad or mamak on a floor, because they are stacked in Israel. It's like a tower, and so otherwise they are not working. And also we were discussing the strategies how to place shelters on the in the public areas according to the distance, walking distance from the beginning of the alarm. And one more thing, shelters must be classified into long-term shelters for long stay and short stay shelters. Of course, you do not need beds in a short-term shelter, but when you equip a shelter in your house, you definitely need a bed there. So these are my comments. And one more thing. Well, talking about the weapons, you know, the weapons which were taken in as standard for designing shelters in 2023, they were up to date in 2022. But now we have to deal with many more kinds of weapons which are no longer fit into this classification. So that is why we are making a course of lectures together with the Israelis. And unfortunately, after listening to them, I understood that even Israel's experience is not fully adaptable to Ukraine. So if we can talk to you a bit later, I will be very grateful. Thank you very much for this lecture and for everyone.
Dear Tatiana, I'm really glad that you're here and that you gave these comments. I would definitely would like
Будь ласка,
to
можна
talk more.
переклад, вибачайте.
Пані Тетяно, вам потрібно перемкнутися на український канал.
Англійську можна?
Зараз, окей. So I'm talking then in English. No. Пані Тетяно, Фулько каже англійською, а вам потрібний український.
You're in our channel, Olena. You're in the English now. Okay. Olena made a mistake. I never seen that. No.
Так, добре чую.
Okay, I will be continuing then. Thank you for your critical recommendations or corrections on the gabions in the basements, the safe rooms, especially on the safe rooms. I'd like to continue to zoom in on that because, of course, there's multiple different typologies in Ukraine. And in some cases, it might still be relevant or tailor-made. We can find solutions. There is one thing that I would like to explain again about how we try to approach it. We didn't want to approach this to be constantly ready for the next level of weapons, to be constantly ready for bigger bombs or missiles or others, but that we could also look at it from a different approach and that we add other elements, not being the direct technical construction elements, but in design, in planning, in positioning, in neighborhoods, that also those elements can help. And actually your remark about it's outdated within 1 or 2 years, when you just fix it to the technical approach, that even supports my idea or our idea that we discussed a lot about. Now we need other approaches as well to be added to that, and then we can hopefully make it a little bit more safer again. And but definitely, Tatiana, let's meet soon.
Yes, please leave your details in. You can leave them in the chat, or you probably know how to reach us. Another
Дякую, було б так само дуже хочеться, цікаво.
Thank you very much. It is a very interesting thing for me, so I will leave my phone in the chat.
Fantastic, thank you. Also, a remark like, why don't people abroad trust and hire Ukrainian specialists? We're great, we just really need time to adapt, but the result would be incredible. I think Tatiana was just an example of that knowledge. Could be hired abroad and make to a value. But so I think it's a
In,
can only
in general, it happens. Of course, there's a lot of the of people who are a lot of organizations and municipalities that do hire Ukrainians, especially starting with the refugees that came to European countries, European Union countries, sorry. But also already a group that went there 4 years ago. So now there is new experience. It's actually quite difficult to connect to sometimes. So I like the question how it's more complicated than just hiring. It's also getting to them, being connected, being involved when you around in Ukraine who experience.
Is this just me? Yeah. Aye. We're losing our speaker. That is really a pity. At the same time, I see Albertas, you also raised your hand, as mentioned before, one of the co-authors of the report, not the co-authors, actually the main author and the main person who started this whole. So I will bring you, Albertas, up to the panel, and you can choose the language in which you want to address, which will be probably English, I guess. Hi.
Hi.
You and could make it in the end.
Thanks. First of all, I would like to say thanks Fulco and all Roscoe team for opportunity to create this report. It was very important and valuable for me to convert my work experience in city government and hard and traumatic experience of 22 days of survival and besieged Mariupol. In this document, I tried to rethink all of data as so much as possible into useful tips that can help other people and cities. I'm happy with the result of this document, and I hope this report will be useful. And I want to say it's not like finished document. It's like flexible document, and we can add new information. Its report must be flexibility, and it's what say Tatiana. Every time we must update and add new information and add a new situation in Ukraine.
Thanks for adding this and being here. Actually, Jennifer Tobola, who was mentioned by Tatiana a lot, couldn't be here because she is traveling at the moment, as is Philip Moiser. So two of the authors unfortunately could not be here. But it's great that you are part of this endeavor. Are there more things to bring up or come to your mind, maybe Ruslan or Albertas, Fulco?
Sorry, I'm in the basement and I was kicked out. And so I see one more hand raised actually, or was that already checked?
Mikola wants to say a few more words, maybe. Mikola, go ahead. Mikola.
Доброго дня.
Good day. I would like to make a comment on the question about the Ukrainian experts working abroad. While Fulco was kicked out of the meeting, he had technical issues. Actually, Ukrainian specialists are working not only in the Netherlands, but all over the world. And the great burden to start working or challenge to start working in Europe is language, because Europe is networking, and it is very good when people know your work in Europe, when you have a network of colleagues, when you have displayed your experience, and then you are very successful as a specialist in Europe. But it is very difficult to get started when no one knows you and you don't know anyone, and also when you do not speak the local language, because each country in Europe has their language, and so to work as an architect or as a civil servant, you must also speak the language of the country and be aware and competent in its legislation, and be able to conduct dialogue with other agencies, specialist organizations, and to be an insider, really. But 3 years, for 3 years already, some of our specialists, Ukrainian specialists, are working abroad, and they are working at all sorts of positions. They are architects, civil servants, and all sorts of other, they're taking all sorts of other jobs. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Valuable addition. I was thinking about the report and from what has been done until now, and I think for me the value of this is that it's so broad and that it's looking at the different scales of security in the building. And what I remember from cities when this first more urbanistic scale and outdoor security came into being is very much, of course, related to embassies, buildings that needed to be protected, and that is, at some point, it was called security chic. And that is related to the wall that you were showing, Fulco, where you have not a concrete high wall as a protection against the bumping, but when the city started to be flocked with plant holders that actually were just posed there so a car couldn't run into the building. And it's not just those kind of things, but there are many, many other examples now in public space that don't look like being there for safety and security, but actually play that role. And I think in all the examples you are giving now, which is these kind, but also much broader towards indeed the lanes of being able to rescue or refuse, it's super important to have. So I think that scale is really nice. But
yeah, thank you. I think even in we had also this safety and security issue when we were looking at the scale of the whole country, almost when we were looking at the Dnipro River in that project. We also saw, of course, the destruction of the Ochakiv Dam and the what happens with the huge amount of people and buildings and houses afterwards, and not only human oriented but also nature, flora, fauna that was destructed. And when you look at a region, the concepts like that, rivers, lakes, and how they are also border crossing, and when you think of how you then can plan with that and what your tools as regional planners or maybe on a government national level planning could mean, yeah, that we play a role and we are responsible for the thinking of that. Doesn't have always easy solutions, but I think that responsibility and that challenge is ours.
Good. I think when there are no other questions, we could call it an evening. And be sure that this discussion is not closing. It was mentioned a couple of times. It is a process in building, in creation on a much longer term, and unfortunately will be needed also on the longer term. So this is it for tonight. I want to thank you all incredibly for being here, for participating, and of course for the speakers of tonight, Fulco Treffers, but also Ruslan and Albertas. Thank you for your time. Thank you for doing the work. And we all hope to see you, both the speakers and the audience, in actually 2 weeks on June the 5th. We have a lecture on Hirske municipality, a municipality which is occupied right now, but Rosfit was joining a team on request of the municipality, a few members of the municipality in exile, how to make plans for the future of Hirske and how to think of how to create that new plans with the community. So how to keep the community alive and active when you're not together on the site itself. So a very relevant topic, I think, for Ukraine at the moment, which is not only for that city, but for many other villages and city. Hirske is not that big, but it's a very relevant example. So hope to see you then. This lecture indeed can be followed on YouTube. There's also the version that Fulco shared earlier, which is on UN Habitat platform in a little bit different format. And you can download indeed the report. So that's it for tonight. Thank you all and hope to see you next time.
Thanks a lot for your attention and your questions. Ciao, ciao.